Welcome back to Inside Out, the podcast. Today's episode is a replay from a conversation that I shared with a beautiful, incredible powerhouse a few weeks ago. Her name is Nerida Bint. She will obviously have this all over her podcast, but I wanted to bring this conversation to you and my audience and my community here on the Inside Out with Kris podcast, because this conversation just had so much depth and gold and all the freaking things. It was very powerful. So drop in and have a listen. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Nerida Bint podcast, and today I'm joined by a dear friend and a fellow coach and mentor. I'm so excited to have you here, Kris. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited just to be in your company and your presence today. It's exciting.
Well, I'm so grateful. Even on our way here, we're having a bit of a chat and I've learned so much from you already. You're always just giving me so much inspiration. So I just want to basically introduce you. So you're a master NLP practitioner. You're basically a personal development life coach. I've watched your work for years, and the work that you do with women and people in general is just incredible. I really appreciate your direct approach that's very honest, but also like sort of delivered with some beautiful compassion. So tell me about your journey.
Yeah, so it's really interesting actually just hearing you reflect on that, because the people that I've worked with, I've invested, over 80K in mentors over the last few years. And what I really learned, people need to call you out on your shit, right? I needed to receive that, to actually go through the motions of the growth and the transformation work that I have received when people called me on the BS and they pushed through the cracks, right? Yeah. And forewarning everyone, I'm going to swear a little bit because that's just that's who I am. That's my it's passion, it's love. It's always coming from love, never from any other place. And it's just noticing that's what I do for my clients. I call them on their shit. I pull them out of their shadows, right? Because we want to sit deeply in our wounds. We actually unconsciously want to sit in our guilt and our shame and our sadness, because there's actually a gain that we can get away with it then, that we don't have to do the work, that it's, because it's all too hard. So it's easier to sit, right?
That is very powerful. We actually want to sit in our wounds. My gosh. Yeah. I'm just sort of processing that. I think there'll be a few of those moments here today. Okay. So tell me, what was one of the biggest insights that you had? Like that moment, I know for me, that moment that like shifted where I was looking at my shadow for the first time. Do you remember what that was like for you? What that was? What was that first time?
For sure. It's definitely been throughout motherhood. So it's like actually witnessing myself pre-motherhood, the judgments, the things that I'd say, the things that I'd feel. And then it's like, oh, I'm doing all those things now. Okay, well, does that make or mean something? No, it doesn't. It just makes sense for me right now in this time, in this space, in this part of my journey. That's what it looks and feels like right now. Like a great example of this is years ago, I remember sitting with a friend and she had her daughter and she hands the phone at the cafe, and I was like, oh, what kind of a mother would do that? Like I got in the car to my mum and I'm like, oh, and mum's like, just you wait. And I'm like, no, my children will not use my phone. They will not have iPads. Like they're toddlers. I had this huge perception, right? Yeah. And what do you know? My kids use YouTube, well, they, within reason, right? They no longer have iPads. We've removed those a couple of months ago, but they can use my phone and things like that. And it's like, whoa, hold on a minute. And that's where my biggest projections have sort of played out, and being witness of myself and reflecting of myself in that. Also, I think the deepest wound I've ever had for me was unworthy. And I think a lot of us have it, and it's played out in a lot of different areas and it's stemmed from a lot of different belief systems and things that were ingrained quite young in relationships, in particular with family, friends, my worth in career, my worth in my intelligence, all that sort of stuff. So I think that's where the work really started to push me outside of my comfort zone, because I was like, hold on, I am actually passionate about something. I actually am good at it. But I thought I wasn't smart. I thought I wasn't worthy of having success. I thought I wasn't worthy of having it all. And now I do. And it's like anyone, if I can have it, anyone can.
So how did you shift that wound? Like for me, I had a guest on the show a couple of weeks ago, Allura Halliwell. Have you heard of her?
No.
Her work's amazing, and she talks about 3 different wounds that we live with. One is the unloved, unworthy, and unseen or unknown. And I was like, that actually makes so much sense, because from all the people that I see, they usually fall into one of those 3 categories. It's either the unloved, the unworthy, or the unknown. So tell me, and for me, mine's the unloved wound. Like that's the thing I've struggled with. So in my work, I show up fully. I don't really doubt myself. I don't think about it too much. I don't really ever compare myself to anybody. I just do my best. And so that's why in my career I've been able to thrive. But in my relationships, I've deeply felt quite unloved or unlovable. And so I have really struggled to overcome that wound. So tell me, what are the things that you've done or the tools that you've worked with to overcome that unworthiness wound and to be in the position that you're in today?
I think that comes from self-love, to be honest with you. It's actually noticing, where am I not showing myself the truest, deepest version of love, and also looking at the highest version of myself, and where am I not meeting that standard? Because like I've said this a couple of times on my own podcast, how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if I'm able to give my kids 100% of love, why the fuck aren't I giving it to myself? Like, why? Actually asking myself why. When did I decide that I wasn't good enough? And noticing that that's leaky, that's toxic, that's not the that's cooked behavior, and I don't play in that small world. Sorry. So it's like, hold on, I am deserving of everything that I want, and it's coming back to, I suppose, there's a lot of little different like modalities and daily practices that I utilize, and also remembering you don't have to do these all at once, right? And that's where I think people get lost. It's like, I will do the I am affirmations, I will meditate, I'll do breath work, I'll do this, I'll do that, and there's like 10 things in a morning routine. It's too much. Do what feels right for you. I know a lot of like my clients that I recommend, because this really supported me on my journey, was the mirror work, right? Like, you know, eye gazing, saying I love you.
Yeah.
It's the inner child work, like speaking to your little you, even having a photo of your little you, like 7-year-old you on your phone as your wallpaper, is a really beautiful way to support loving that version of yourself, because all it does unconsciously is integrates that self-belief and that self-trust that you are worthy, you are good enough, right? So yeah, there's a couple of things there that I definitely have done in my journey.
I love that. That's so powerful. And I love that you say it's unreasonable to be able to do all those things, but even if you did one thing really consistently, that would just move the needle in such a big way. So yeah, I think we do. We talk ourselves out of it. We become so overwhelmed that we don't do anything. Whereas if we just did one of those things, like a couple of affirmations or journaling down just a couple of, sentences for the day, that would actually go a long way.
Yeah, I've even this week, there's been a bit of a theme with some clients I work with, and it's like, it feels overwhelming. It's too much. There's too many to-dos. And I'm like, whoa, let's strip it back, babe. Journaling even. Like, let's talk about journaling. They're like, I feel like I failed because I'm not, the task was that I do journaling this week. And I'm like, hold up, no. You can write to me. You can write in notes in your phone. You can just lay down and go, what were my intentions today, or how did I show up today? How can I do better tomorrow? What am I proud of? What am I celebrating? It's just reflection. Like, let's take away that the thing is journaling, and it has to be a gratitude journal. It has to like be 100 words, whatever you're doing, and putting that pressure on yourself, remove it and strip it back.
Yeah.
Journaling is reflection.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And what does reflection mean to you?
Yes. That's actually such a good point that you say that, because I was just with a client last night. She's got 4 kids. She's got 2 businesses. She's really struggling with time. And I said to her, do you shower every day? Because she just kept pushing back. Like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. And I'm like, well, do you shower every day? And she's like, yeah, of course I do. Well, what about in the shower? Like, could you just in the shower, like, have that moment of sort of like intention, like being very intentional about your day, who you want to be, how you want to show up, what emotions you want to feel into, how you're going to create those emotions, how you're going to feel into them. And she was sort of so like taken away by that. And I was too, as I was saying it, because I'd never even really thought about it. I was just trying to work with her in the moment. But you're right. It doesn't need to be any fixed formula as long as we're practicing that reflection every day.
Yeah. And I really pride myself on that mapping into all areas, relationship, your parenting experience, your health and vitality. Like, okay, great. If you are someone that operates at 110% in their health and vitality, and that works for you and you have the space and capacity energetically for that, cool, you do you. If you don't, and you feel like you're stretched in each and everything that you're trying to achieve, and it's never sustainable, and it's always so challenging, it's because you're doing the thing that isn't bringing you joy. It's not lighting you up, right? You're doing the things that don't work for you.
Yeah.
I eat McDonald's, right? And I coach people in their health. I also eat really clean and healthy.
Yeah.
I also drink red wine. I also sauna every day and take an ice bath a few times a week. That's my vibe. Balance is my vibe. That's what health means to me.
Yeah.
And my family,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I don't shame and guilt myself for the things that work.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking of shame and guilt, like they're 2 emotions. Like guilt's not so much for me, but shame. I've lived with a lot of shame and really like had to work so hard to sort of detach myself from that. Are they emotions that you've experienced a lot of, and how have you stepped through trying to I love that you talk about, not having that shame for, when you're leaning into things that potentially other people might judge. So I really love that you've got that approach. Is that something you've had to work hard to sort of distance yourself from?
Absolutely. And I think when I first think about that question, it's, okay, where am I not giving myself permission to be with where things are, right? So noticing that another thing I can reflect on, and I don't know why things keep coming back to health in this conversation, but today it's like, women say a lot of the time, I just want to get back to who I was when I was 20 or when I was 23 or whatever the case. And I'm like, wait, but who was she? Actually, who was she? You're just talking about how you looked. Who was that version of you?
Yeah.
Did she hold shame? Did she hold guilt? And they're like, it's like almost giving permission to yourself to be who you are now. That version of you that you are now, she has so much more wisdom and love and resilience and compassion than she did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
So that's straight off the bat what I sort of think about. The other thing is, so I've done my master's with neuro-linguistic programming, and one of the modalities we utilize is emotional change therapy, so ECT, which essentially clears out limiting beliefs and releases stagnant traumas. Now, when I say stagnant traumas, I really want to just expand on that a little bit, because trauma can be what it means to you. So it can be big and horrific and horrible and heartbreaking, and that is trauma, and it's valid. And it can be something really, really almost minute and small that one person might look at through the lens of that wasn't traumatic. But all of our limiting beliefs are formed in our imprint years between the ages of 0 to 7.
Yes.
So for some children, that's really horrific things. And for some people, it's not tying up your sister's braid quick enough and mum saying, we've got to go, we've got to get out the door, hurry up, I'll just do it myself. And that can create a limiting belief. So unconsciously, your unconscious mind will seek the evidence that you're not good enough from that first time that it happened.
Yeah.
Whether that's true, it's absolutely not. But that's a limiting belief, and where it sometimes can be found, right?
And isn't it funny, like, how powerful these beliefs are, and how they just, we look for them everywhere we go in life, like we have something happen and we just look for that to just reaffirm and confirm that belief.
Absolutely.
Now, earlier on in this interview, you said that we like to sit in our wounds because we get something out of feeling those feelings. Like, talk to me a little bit about that. Why would anyone want to feel bad?
Yeah, so it's kind of like this bubble, I like to define it as. So in the bubble, we have self-doubt, we might have scarcity, we might have a lack of self-worth. But in the bubble, we've been there our whole lives. So there's a fireplace, there's a couch, there's a warm, cozy blanket. We've been there, we're safe there. Nothing can touch us more than they've already touched us, because we're here and we've existed here for so long. Yeah. So to come out of the bubble feels scary, right? We don't know what's outside. We don't know how we can protect ourselves. Like, even though there's self-doubt playing out and there's cooked behavior playing out and there's a lack of self-love and worth and all these negative emotions that we're holding, it's safe. Yeah. It's all our body and mind knows to be, because we haven't been anywhere else. If you haven't stepped into the highest frequency, the highest version of yourself and lived your life in full congruence and alignment, you don't know what that feels like to step out of the bubble and have that. So it's freaking scary. So you want to stay there with your fireplace and your little cozy couch, and it's nice and safe, but also hate yourself and you're miserable.
That's really potent. Like, very, very true, isn't it? Like, we actually fear the unknown. We'll take the familiar. There's a saying, we will feel into, take familiar over the unknown every day of the week, because it's just something that we know. Yeah. On the other side of fear is growth. Every single time. You want to bungee jump? Like, my 13-year-old bungee jumped in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago. Was she terrified? Yes. Petrified. When my husband told me that they were doing it, I was like, look, if she doesn't want to do it, if she gets to the top, you just, just going to have to take it down, kind of thing. And she freaking did it, and then she did it again, right? and celebrating jumping off a bloody building and being like, I can do that. Like, what did she feel? That adrenaline, that empowerment, that drive to do something that was scary again and again. Yeah. Right? Once we push outside that comfort zone, the other side of it, like, look at it, it's growth. Okay, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to be a bit selfish and ask you.
What do you got?
I'm just going to. So for me personally, I'm with you. Like, I'm so about pushing myself in all different areas. I love to challenge myself. I love adventure sports. I love growth. I love learning. There are so many areas, like, in that space. Like I will pretty much say yes to anything. Like there's not a lot of things I'll say no to. Now, recently I was dating a guy, and it's really interesting because, you know, here I am, like done all this work on myself, working on relationships. I'm thinking I'm really ready to start dating again. And and I met this guy that's very emotionally intelligent. And it was so interesting the ways that I was holding back and I was fearful. So how do we do it? Like when it comes to intimacy and like doing that, like trying to grow and challenge ourselves and like do the bungee jump, how do we do it in relationship and in intimacy and in that space where it feels so scary? Because I could feel myself like projecting. I could feel myself like going to say things to sort of keep him just that little bit further away, or doubting him, or I could really feel myself doing it. And it was the first time I really noticed all the little ways that I keep myself separate from love.
And I would love to also invite the question of, did you notice he had a lack of commitment?
Definitely.
And notice how that played out with your lack of commitment?
Yeah.
And it's like, go all in. What would happen? What would happen if you actually let your walls come down? What would happen if you shared, I'm freaking scared and I'm just sharing this because I want to hold back, but I think that I should just go that bit deeper.
Yeah.
What's possible on the other side of that? Is it learning? Like what's the teachings that will come out of it if it didn't work out? Which is always great, right? The worst things in the world can happen to you and you will always learn something if you decide that you want to.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
That comes back to choice.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, the possibility of he's feeling that too. Great.
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
feel it together and be aware of it together.
Yeah.
So that the projection doesn't play out in cooked behaviour.
Yeah, yeah. I love the word cooked.
I know.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone use that as much as you do.
I love it.
Cooked behaviour.
Everyone's cooked.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I actually did share how scared I was. And I did share a lot of those emotions where I normally wouldn't have. Normally, if I was feeling those emotions, I would cut it off and I would project onto them. I would say, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not showing up, rather than just actually owning it. I did also own a few things. Like, I made a comment once that I could see was not incongruent with the way I wanted the relationship to go. And then he reflected that same comment back to me a few days later. And I noticed how much that stung when it was said to me, because it was something along the lines of, well, if this doesn't work out, then X, Y, Z. And it was like, I actually said to him, I said, I was like, I'm going to own that. And I'm going to actually say that I don't like that I said that comment, because I can see that that's actually keeping me safe. And I don't want to use that anymore. Like, I don't want us to do that. And so I am actually proud of myself for leaning in a few of those really difficult conversations for me. And I could feel my whole body going into anxiety, like going into fear as I did that.
Interesting how, I'm going to say cooked behaviour again. Interesting how the cooked behaviour comes out to play when it's to do with our ego, so our concept of self. And when we think about the word ego, right, and many people listening might be like, that just means arrogant, or that means that you're a crappy person, or that means that you're this or that. Like the ego has been labelled as something that is negative language, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's bring it back to what it actually is. Our ego is our concept of self, what I want you to see.
What I want you to see
about me. And if you see something I don't like, that stings. And all of us have a different perception of our own reality, right? We all know this, right? But if you were to say to me right now, like, oh, Kris, I don't think you're a good person. Well, in my ego, one of those things that I strongly believe is that I am a good person. So that would be hurtful. And I'd be like, oh, how? Why? And then I'd probably overcompensate or I'd resist you. There's two ways I'd go with it, right? I'd be like, I want to show you how good I am and make it mean something to you, make you value me so I can get my validation and get my worthiness from you. Or I'd resist and it would be like a big fuck you. It's like, no, you don't get to say that about me. That's not true. You're wrong. I'm right.
Yeah.
And that's where my ego is. That's where I'm playing out like my concept of self.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole self-concept thing is so new to me. I feel like apparently it's a big thing lately, but I've never heard of it. And it was really interesting when things ended with this guy. I do what I always do. I dive into all these podcasts. I try to make sense of it. I journal, I cry, I release, all this sort of stuff. So I was on this weekend of just processing it. And I came across this podcast about self-concept. And for me, I always actually believed that I thought I was worthy of love. I know I've got this unlovable wound, but I deep down was like, no, I've done so much work on myself. I know I'm worthy of a relationship. I know I'm worthy of being a mother and a wife. Now, I don't know what it was about this podcast, but it really resonated because of the way she talked about how we show up in different parts of our lives. So she asked me, she sort of spoke about writing down all the ways that you the thoughts that you have and the beliefs that you have about yourself, like in your fitness, like in your health and well-being, in your career, in your relationship, as a parent, as a friend. So I would write all these things down. So in my training, like if I fail something, I'm just so determined. I'm like, fuck that. I want to go back and get that. Like I'm just going to keep going. Like I'm so persistent and determined. I don't like hold back and like, oh, I shouldn't try that. I really show up. In my career, same thing. Like I could reach out to people to come on the podcast. I could ask people to work with me. People say no. And I'm just like, oh, well, whatever. Like I don't make it mean anything. I don't even think about it. I'm just like, cool. I don't sit there and think, oh, I shouldn't have da-da-da. But then I started journaling on the relationship and I was like, oh my gosh, all these doubts and fears, these fear-based thoughts that are showing me that actually my self-concept in that area is not strong and not worthy. And it was just blew my mind to actually see, well, no, you've got this deep belief that it's not going to work out for you, then you're not going to be chosen. And I think that's just such a powerful way to like look at the different parts of yourselves and look at the different areas that you feel that you are worthy and not.
Absolutely. Everything's a initiation. Like let's look through the lens of nothing's a challenge. I'm just going to reshuffle myself.
Go for it.
Nothing is like if we look at the word problem, right? It's the language that we use as well, which is super important. It's like, this is a problem. Okay, wait, I'm going to reframe that to challenge. Wait, let's reframe it again to initiation.
Yeah, I love, yeah.
And then what does that get for you?
Yeah.
What do you gain from that?
Yeah.
And when we're coming back to that question earlier around secondary gain, sitting in a negative emotion, the benefit of sitting in X, Y, Z. So let's talk about sadness. The benefit of me sitting in sadness is that I probably drink a bottle of wine a night. Oh, that's fun. Then I don't have to prepare dinner. Oh, that's easy. Then the washing's not updated. Oh, well, I don't want to do it anyway, right? Like, let's look at the pattern there that plays out as.
Yeah.
Because I chose to sit in sadness. That's the secondary gain. What I've worked out within myself is that I lack responsibility. And my biggest and most, sorry, not my biggest, but my highest value is freedom. And you can imagine 4 kids, 3 businesses. Sometimes I don't feel very free, right?
Of course.
I feel that stretch and that restriction and that like, oh, I just don't want to be touched. Like my kids and little kids that I have, my 3 and 4-year-old are very affectionate little ones and they love their mum and that's perfect and beautiful, but also get off me kind of thing. So noticing that, you know, when I'd have in the past chosen to sit in sadness, the secondary gain was like a responsibility because I just wanted the freedom. So if I cultivate the freedom, right, and to integrate the freedom into my day and what that looks like for me, I might not get my hour sauna in every day, but I do get 10 minutes and I prioritize it. And maybe I've got a photo of my daughter last week and she's blowing like, you know, the fish faces onto the screen of the sauna and she's like, hurry up, mum, come out, mum. I'm like, this is mummy's time. And I just sat there for 10 minutes and I just got it done because I'm like, I need this.
Yes.
Sometimes exercise isn't 45 minutes. It's like 3 minutes of burpees and that, like whatever that'll do. Yeah. The kids are climbing, like it just, you do what works, stripping it back. Yeah. If my highest value is freedom and I'm not receiving freedom in my every single day in some format, then I'm going to feel restricted. I'm going to allocate sadness as a priority and then I'm going to have that lack of responsibility. And then that just fucks up the whole system. The washing's not done, the kids aren't fed. It's Domino's pizzas and, you know, that doesn't make me feel good. I don't feel strong-minded. I don't feel disciplined, motivated, committed to myself. That's a lack of integrity for me. When I'm out of intentionality, I'm out of integrity. And that's not who I am.
So can I ask you though, because a lot of the work that I've been doing has been about being okay with sitting in those heavier emotions and actually starting to feel them more. So because what I would spend a lot of my time doing is just resisting them, like just avoiding all of my emotions, like scrolling social media, shopping, whatever, just staying really busy that I didn't have to feel. So do you, like when you say like sitting in sadness, like do you recommend, you know, spending time processing those emotions and actually working through them and actually sort of asking yourself, like feeling into them, or what's your process there? What's your structure?
So we want to feel the emotion, like the polarity of, you know, sadness and anger is joy. You can't feel joy without feeling sadness.
Totally,
the word, so linguistically I've studied language and linguistics in my master's, but linguistically speaking, the word emotion is energy in motion.
Yeah.
So move. You want to be sad? Great. Let's start off being sad. Let's cry.
Yeah.
And then what comes up next? Is it anger? Are you going to sit in great example of this is if you're sitting in sadness, you're crying, you're journaling, you're being really reflective and probably in your soft feminine.
Yeah.
Great. But then you've moved to anger.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you doing with the anger? Are you still journaling about it? Or
Yeah.
can you go for a run? Can you go under the water and scream at the top of your lungs? Let it out.
Yeah.
Do something with it.
Yeah.
For me, we've got a boxing bag in our home gym.
Yeah.
Get on the boxing bag, right?
Yeah.
Punch a pillow. Scream into a pillow.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this big crazy thing.
Yeah.
I think one of the most paramount things in this work has been that noticing, in particular for men, which is, a part of, I suppose, my mission and my message is anger is a healthy emotion.
Yeah.
Can we stop saying angry is bad, mean, violent, abuse, this, and this? Well, in yes, some cases that exists.
Yeah.
But anger in little boys, like let them fucking be angry
totally.
and teach them how to process anger in a healthy way.
In a healthy way. Yeah.
You can go and scream on a mountaintop and that doesn't make you an abusive, violent man.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can feel that emotion because after you move it,
Yeah.
move the energy, notice what comes up.
Totally.
What's next?
Yeah.
So, really, really invite
Yeah.
people to sit with, if you start with sadness, sit with the sadness, but don't use the same modalities that you're using for sadness for the next emotion.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, express it in, I think a lot of people think that to feel any of these emotions, it's bad, but it's like the emotion isn't bad. It's the behavior that's bad. Like if you were to go and punch someone, like that behavior wouldn't be good. But if you find a healthy way to express that anger in a way that's safe, then it's not the emotion, it's the behavior that's not ideal.
Yeah, 100%.
Great. I love that. So tell me, because I am feeling a lot of anger right now. I've processed sadness, I'm fine with because I cry, I journal, but anger is something that I'm noticing popping up for me right now. And I'm like, today I'm sort of like, okay, I'm going to need to release this. Like, what can I do to get this out?
Are you sick in here, in your chest?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So scream.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah.
Go to the beach, go under the water and scream till your little heart doesn't feel sick anymore.
Yeah.
You could do either or do both. Start with sprints on the beach, run as fast as you can. It can be 10 meters. I don't care how long it is.
Yeah.
Fast as you can, as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And really notice that shift.
Yeah.
That release there, right?
Yeah.
And then go and do the underwater thing or whichever way you want to do
Yeah.
it. That's
Love
what I
that.
would say. I've had clients or coaching calls and and she's sitting with anger and she's like, I can't, no, I'm so sad. I'm like, cool, let's move to anger. And she would do, I'm like, scream. And she's going, no, I don't want I'm like, scream, do it. Scream at me. I can hold you in this. There's no one home. You live, in the outskirts. No one can hear you. You're safe to do this. It's okay to scream. Let it out.
Yeah.
And when she let it out, the freaking light on this girl's face.
Yes. Yeah.
The release, the feeling, the emotion she felt. She's like, oh my God, I feel so good.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as that.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I won't scream right now, but I'll do it when I get I love that sprints idea too, because it's a nice way to sort of release that, but also feel into that freedom as well.
And look, not everyone can do that.
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
noticing that that's not for everyone.
Yeah,
But everyone can punch the shit out of
yeah.
their pillow.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that doesn't hurt anyone.
Yeah.
I'm at the moment incorporating and teaching my son to do that. When he wants to throw toys in his room, and I said, you can't throw toys, but you can.
Yeah.
You can hit your pillow. If you're feeling like you want to be angry, you can be angry at your pillow.
Yeah.
You can't hit mama and you can't hit your sisters.
Yeah.
That's not on. But what you can do is hit your pillow, because you won't hurt your pillow.
Yeah.
But you can hurt people, and you can hurt mummy's white walls, and he knows about mummy's white walls. He goes up to them and scratches them when he's being cheeky, and he's like, I'm going to scratch your walls if you don't give me the ice cream.
Hilarious. I love that. That is so funny. So tell me, with the work that you do with women, do you mainly work with women? Do you work with any men?
Yeah,
you do.
I've
Yeah.
had a few male,
Okay, great.
Not a few. I've had probably 10 male clients that I've worked with
Amazing.
in the last 6 months, which has been really, really incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are you noticing about men? What are you noticing that's common with the men that are coming to work with you?
Men have been told to shut down their feelings since the day they were born, and they don't know how to process their feelings.
Yeah.
And the ones that are learning and doing the work, we mentioned on the drive out here that we were sort of touching on this in the masculine, and how, let's call it a 10% ratio to the 90% of women, right, that are actively seeking this journey and doing the deep inner work. And I think it will continue to grow, this number, and I'm so excited about that. But men have been told to shut down their anger.
Yeah.
Shut it down. It's bad. So what's happening is men are going into their feminine, and then the females
Has to go in the
masculine.
Yeah.
And then there's a disconnect because you're not attracted to each other.
Yeah.
Or you're not attracted to him and he's not attracted to her, or whatever the case, or she's too controlling, she's too fierce. She's, they go into this dance of a rhythm that lacks, right? I was about to say the word dysrhythm, but I don't think that's a word. But it's like, there's no duality in it. It's out of balance. So men, I'm really, really witnessing, it's like, let them feel. They don't have to sit down and cry for the emotion to come out. And I think that's where some women may be getting confused in terms of they want to cry and show that emotion. Well, let your husband or partner hold you in that. But it doesn't mean they have to. They might need anger release and let them have that. Let them scream. Hold them while they do, or just be there while they do, or invite them to. Right?
I think it's interesting. I love that you talk about that, but I think a lot of women are afraid of their partner's anger.
Yep, absolutely. I was raised, my dad didn't often raise his voice, but when he did, I listened. Yeah. And that was scary.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So in the past when I've had any violence around me, right, like being boys getting in punch-ups and stuff like that, like super dysregulating. That's scary. That's violent. That's mean. That's bad. Like call the police. That's, there's a level there where I'm just like, oh my God, like what is that? Because I was a bit naive to it, I suppose. I wasn't around that kind of behavior. And I think that you can be stern and fierce as a man, and you can hold yourself to a standard where you are deeply in your masculine, and you can also be vulnerable in it. And anger can be a vulnerable emotion. And I don't think people are noticing that they can have both, the duality and play with the two emotions.
That's powerful. Wow. Yeah, I've never heard anyone talk about that. What does that look like? Like,
I don't know that anyone has. I think I just made it up then.
You cracked me up.
It's just like,
I just love you so much.
You can have both. You can be angry, and anger being a healthy emotion is vulnerability. Like I'm reflecting on my 4-year-old son when he's screaming and having a tantrum, he's being vulnerable.
He is vulnerable. Yeah.
So when a grown-ass man is doing it, why isn't he?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. We do this all the time, don't we? I notice one of two things with people, especially parents. They will either give their partner more compassion that they can give their kids, or the vice versa. But we don't hold this, like we really struggle. We put different rules on different people depending on who they are and what they should be able to do, like emotionally regulate. Like I see people be able to hold space for their kids and really, really parenting them in a beautiful, conscious way, but then their partner might have an emotion and they've got no tolerance for it, or vice versa. They can handle the emotion in their partner, but they've got no tolerance for their kids. They just shut that shit down. It's so interesting.
It is interesting.
Do you see that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think as I mentioned just before, around women being in the masculine and men being in the feminine, the fastest way to sort of, for anyone listening that is like, oh yeah, that's me, that feels like my relationship, something that I invite my clients to do is let him hold you, let him be over and you under, and just sit in it. Let him lead. Yeah. Lead with decisions, micro decisions. Are you in a relationship where you're deciding every restaurant? Because I don't know, what do you want? So they're putting it back on you because they don't want to get it wrong.
Exactly. You've criticised them so much so that I see this all the time. Yeah. Women are like so wanting men to lead and show up, but yet they criticise every little thing that they do. Yeah. And so, of course, a man's not going to be able to lead and sort of, help, run your relationship when he feels like he's not even trusted to take you to a restaurant.
Yeah. And look, sometimes I don't even think it's conscious behavior when a woman's doing it. It's unconscious, and it might, her reason might be, let's just say she wants to go to this restaurant. She's seen it on Instagram. Her friend's been there. Someone else famous has been there. Yeah. She's been influenced by something she's seen and she really wants to go there. And he suggested something else. Yeah. She's like, no, I want to go this one. He's like, well, this is around the corner. This makes sense logically. Yeah. So in his head, he's doing the right thing, and she's like, no, I said I wanted to go to this. Why don't you ever think that, listen to what I say? Then she's not feeling heard and seen, right?
Yes, of course.
So it's like, it plays out in all different behavior. But I definitely feel like the first thing, if you're in a relationship and you're feeling that disconnect and that resistance from each other, like, let him lead. Let him lead. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, if you're not feeling seen and heard, like if that's really a one-off situation, but if the rest of the relationship's really connected and you're feeling really good, it's not going to bother you so much. But if it's a common thing, I think what people do is they focus on the surface level things so much, but they don't actually go underneath and figure out what's going on. Like, I don't think many women would actually be able to say, hey, I'm really noticing that I'm feeling quite, misunderstood by you. And I'm noticing that, like, every time we sort of disagree, I have to heighten and just completely get big and loud and sort of large to get you to hear me. You know, that's the default. That's what I'm having to do, but I'm noticing this throughout the whole relationship. Or, you know, the man, like I hear a lot of men I coach, you know, the bid for connection thing pops up a lot. Like a man will try to bid for connection with his partner and she's turning away from him a lot. Like, and he just starts to know. He just starts to really sort of hold back and stop doing that because he knows every time he goes to connect with her, he's just going to be pushed away because kids, busy, whatever, da-da-da. And so you just start to, but it's like if you can learn to speak up and say, hey, I'm really noticing, like, I've been sort of like trying to connect with you and I feel like you're pushing me away. I know you're busy. I know you're breastfeeding, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But this is how I'm feeling. Like we just don't know how to do that, do we? Because it's so vulnerable and scary.
It does feel scary, but once you start and remain consistent with your feelings and thoughts and behaviours, it's reflective everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the old saying, speak how you want to be spoken to.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? We all want vulnerability, but we all want someone else to go first, don't we?
And noticing, like what I said just before around anger being vulnerable, like all emotions can be vulnerable if you decide that they are.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've never heard that before, and but you're right. Like when I think about my nephew, like he has anger bursts, like outbursts, and yeah, he is very vulnerable when that's happening. So I don't know why I would think differently for an adult because you just put them into a different category.
You do.
Yeah, but actually they're really not.
Absolutely not. It's just vulnerability that looks a different way. And if you can, like, you know, we're teaching our children now, like the awareness cues and things that little kids have, like my son has tools to regulate his emotions. He does deep breaths in and deep breaths out. I need space, mummy. I just need some space. And he'll take himself away. Like not all the time he does this. He's only 4, but, you know, more tools than most grown men, right?
Yeah.
So there's a different generation about to hit with
it's amazing, isn't it?
But, you know, it's those minor moments and being really radically aware of, well, how am I judging an adult and not the child?
Yes.
When every adult is the child.
Yeah.
When I'm working on my inner child, right, and I'm seeing my cooked behaviour.
Yeah.
And we should have a cocktail in here for every time I say cooked behaviour, we've got a drink.
Love it.
Like when I'm noticing my behaviour playing out, I'm going, oh, that's my inner child, and I've got to, you know, go and, you know, deal with that wound or deal with that worthiness thing or that reflection or that projection. Well, hold up. Look at why am I judging? Why am I allowing myself to judge someone else's wounded child?
Yeah. Yeah, because we take it so personally, don't we? We take it so personally. And this is the thing I really struggle with. Like, it's funny because if someone has a wounded child that's similar to mine, I have so much empathy. Like, I've got so much compassion because obviously I can relate. But it's when it's different, it's when it's the opposite that I really struggle.
It's interesting because the word empathy, linguistically speaking, is pathetic. They both mean the same thing, right?
Oh, right. Yep.
So when you look at it through that lens, why does that resonate?
Because I have empathy for them.
Because of how you feel about you at that time.
Yeah. But yet I don't have that same empathy. I've had to really work on that empathy for like someone's inner child that's like flipped, like, you know, different behavior. So like I tend to attract men who are more controlling, I suppose, like more and maybe less okay with being vulnerable. And so that's really interesting because I find that so confusing and I find their behaviour so confusing, but it's taken me so much to sort of work through that they're still in their inner child and they've got their little protective mechanisms playing out, but they're just different to mine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Powerful,
so
hey?
Yeah, so powerful.
Do you work with couples?
I have.
Yep. How do you find that?
Oh, look, it was great.
Yep.
It was great.
Yep.
But everyone needs to be in it.
Yes. Do you find that there's always one couple that, like in the couples, there's always one that's sort of more invested than the other?
Yeah, sometimes. I think it's noticing that you both have to show up and do the work.
Yeah.
It's not that she can just go and do it or he can just go and do it and you're going to half-ass it, whichever way it does it. You know, it's not to say that women do it more or men do it more. It's simply to say, like, if you're going to show up and do couples coaching, actually be in it fully.
Yeah.
And hold each other in that space.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not something that I currently offer, no.
Yeah. I'm just curious because Like, do you find that relationships are something that a lot of people struggle with when they come to work with you?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
all like the road of, in particular with parenthood, and the changes that a woman goes through, and the season of matrescence and that identity shift of who she is and who she was, and the husband's like, hold on, what about me? Like, I miss you. And she's like, don't touch me, don't come near me. But he's like, oh, but what? I'm trying here, and he is trying.
Yeah.
But they're dancing with two different rhythms, two different songs are playing out, and neither of them can find space to connect. Right? So connection is first and foremost, and it's the woman getting out of her masculine, because she is in her feminine and making like, even though she's in her feminine with the kids and nurturing and soft and being in that, she's also in her masculine because she's making all the decisions. Let's say you go on holiday. Who packs all the bags?
Yeah.
Who does all the washing?
Yeah.
Who plans the day trips? Who remembers the bottles? Who remembers the dummies? Or
Yeah.
whatever the case, the prams, the this, the that.
Yeah.
Sure, the husband might have booked the trip and paid for it because that's what they do, right?
Yeah.
But she also feels like she's deeply in a mask.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there's that disconnect again, and the masculine playing out.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship? Like, how does that play out? Like, tell me about your marriage.
Yeah, my marriage is amazing. My husband is incredible and in his masculine, and I think that's the greatest part. And any initiation that I've experienced has been because I've almost wanted to be in my masculine. It's like, oh, pull back, he's there. Right?
Yes, yeah.
And he leads, and he's a incredible leader, and he's so emotionally intelligent, self-aware, radical responsible. Like, he's just everything that I could ever imagine being with.
Yeah.
And I love that he's always open for more, always looking for more growth, more change, more drive. He's just such a driven human being, and I love that because it's like, I'm like, oh, I can keep up. I'm going to try. He's just so motivating to be around.
Yeah.
And he's my best friend. He's literally my best friend. I could talk to him all day about anything and everything. And that's, I suppose, that behavioral flexibility for me is something that I've been really, really working hard over the last probably decade, but more seriously the last 5 years in integrating, because it's like I can be in my mask, right? I can be in my dark feminine in terms of running a business, running a team of 20 men in a sales group, right? Hiring and firing people, things like that. Like I can be that version of myself, and I can also be in my feminine and let someone else lead and make decisions. And that feels really good for me and congruent and in alignment in my relationship. I think we are so deeply aligned in so many ways. And I love that so much. Like, same level of parenting ideas and ideals, like same goals for the future. Like, there's nothing that plays out that's like, no.
They're not,
you know
they're
what
not
I mean?
aligned.
Like, it's just, we have a blended family, which has had its own challenges and initiations through that, and bringing two of our own kids into that family dynamic.
Yeah.
I've got.
Do you have any kids previous?
No. So we've got two teenagers, two toddlers, and that.
Yes.
Out at the moment, we just got a puppy. We've been doing renovations for 6 months. So look, there's we've been busy and noticing that we're needing some time together soon, and we just make ourselves aware of it, chat it out, and make that time available to each other. It's so healthy for us. We are really lucky that we have support.
Yeah.
And are people that want to prioritize our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long ago did you guys meet?
Great question. I worked for him for a while.
Yeah.
And it was, I kind of know, 2000, maybe like 2013 we met, but like got together, I think, like end of 2016, maybe mid 2016. Can't remember.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Around then.
Yeah.
Been married 4 or 5 years now. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, I love hearing
Never look
people's I love hearing people's like stories where they've found that person that they can really feel aligned with. It gives me a lot of hope. Yeah.
Look, the right person's there.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just continuing to be open
to
what else is available to
you. And I think it's so important, like I love how you talk about your values and about how aligned they are. Like, I think that's so important. For me, growth is something that's such a high value for me. So I'm always wanting to grow, learn, look at what I'm not seeing and always expand. So, I think where I've really struggled is being with people who are not ready. And don't get me wrong, I'm probably the same in some areas of my life too. I'm not ready to see things. So, it's a tricky one. Yeah. And so tell me, what is on the cards for you this next sort of 6 to 12 months? Like in your business, like what's the direction you're taking, the clients that you're wanting to pull in, that you're wanting to work with? You know, what are the things that you're excited about? I know you mentioned earlier you're looking at doing some retreats next year.
Yes, I'm hopeful that I can pull that off with the 4 kiddies and the systems and schedules that we have. Would love to start doing that. I've got some like-minded clients that I just deeply want to put in a room together. I'm like, you guys, like, let's, you know, you have to sit at tables that expand and accelerate your growth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's go. Let's freaking accelerate this kind of thing. So yeah, would love to do retreats. I would love to do some group containers next year, just finalizing a few details on that, whether it's something that I definitely feel like it's in alignment. I really, really prefer myself the close proximity coaching.
Yeah.
I like one-on-one myself when I have a mentor. So for me, I really do call in the clients that are looking for that one-on-one mentorship.
Yeah.
And they get the best results from that.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel like I can move you with speed.
Yeah.
I can freaking empower you and get you from A to F, like not even A to B. Like, let's go to F. How far can we go in the time we're getting together? And I suppose that my goal with the work that I do is I want you not to want to work with me. I want you to say, I'm done.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
This
Bye.
is it. Like, if I can do that in 12 weeks, great. If I can do that in 6 months, great. Like, I don't care how long it takes, but we're going to get you there.
Yeah.
Right?
Love
like,
that.
yes, you're in charge of the results, but I'm results driven.
Yeah,
So let's
yeah.
freaking go.
Yeah.
Like, let's make it happen. I can give you all the tools in the world, and you are in charge of, you know, doing the work and going to the depths.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I'm just so motivated to continue doing it in that aspect.
Yeah.
And the women that I have essentially like stopped working with because they've closed that loop, right? Just the empowerment they feel, the change, the ripple effect, the ripple impact to their children, their husbands,
it's amazing,
their
isn't
mothers, their fathers. Like, it's just like, fuck, like, this is what I'm here to do.
Yeah,
this
it's
is
so
what I'm here
cool.
for. Yeah, yeah.
So tell me, one of the things that I really struggle with in my coaching is tracking their results. Like, I find myself like always reflecting back to my clients, like noticing the changes that they're making, the ways that they're responding, reacting, that are shifting. But how do you do it in a way where it's like actually, you know, sort of actually able to look at? Yeah. How do you track your clients' results?
I think, look, obviously it's what's going on in their lives and how they're feeling. That's one, right? And the other thing is like, actually, let's look at the progress. What were you week 1 and the notes that you take and what you actually decide that is worth writing down, because we can't sit and record the entire, well, we could record the entire session, but we don't.
Yep.
And noticing how deeply, like, where were they at when they started?
Yeah, yeah.
And in those areas of life, of all those areas of life, are they still there?
Yeah.
And sure, so there might be some more things to clean up,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But they're feeling pretty good in the other areas.
Yeah,
so that's, you know, and I like to sort of rate it, you know, out of 10. Let's say let's say you said, oh, love or self-love was an 8.
Yeah.
I'd be like, great, how do we get it to an 8.5?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need you at a 10, 110% of the time.
Yeah.
I just want to get you that little bit further.
Yeah.
So you can see that you can do it. And then we can get to the 9, and then we can get to the 10. If you want to be the 10, cool, let's do that. Right? But just noticing, and usually the numbers thing is great to work with.
Yeah.
But reflecting on where they were.
Yeah.
Be really realistic. Like, what was that first call? Did they cry?
Yeah.
Was their relationship totally disconnected?
Yeah.
You know, and what does that look like now? Sure, there's always going to be initiations and challenges.
Yes.
That doesn't change. I had a mentor say to me once, new level, new devil.
Yeah, I love that saying.
Never
love
freaking changes.
Yeah.
Right?
I know. You don't finally just get to a place where you're fine.
We're not supposed to.
There's always something, Your
relationship isn't supposed to thrive 100% of the time. That would be ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable for anyone, right?
Yeah.
So, like, your health's going to be the same. Your money mindset's going to be the same.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay that it's not perfect 100% of the time. But being okay with that imperfection too.
Yeah.
Really,
totally.
really helps.
Are you being coached by any mentors at the moment?
Currently, no.
Yeah. Who are some of the biggest mentors, like who in your life have you worked with that's been very impactful for you?
So I did my training with Elizabeth Ann Walker and then invested into a small group container after the training, which was absolutely so powerful. If you don't follow Elizabeth, go and follow her to learn more about NLP and things like that. She is just someone that she's like an encyclopedia, but in terms of energetics and spirituality and everything compounded into every known fact in the world. Like, you have a question and this woman's got the answer. She's done it all, and she's really, really incredible. I'm bringing her on the podcast really soon. I've worked with a beautiful woman. She was my breathworks coach for 2 years. Her name is Nicola Lay. She's from the Gold Coast, and she brought me back to my feminine. She dealt with my inner child. She's done some really, really powerful things. So those 2 people have probably been most profound. And outside of that, it's the influences in my life, like having a husband that is just as incredible as he is.
Yeah.
I recently, well, not recently, but like a year ago, I became best friends as an adult with a new girl. And it was like, and she's a coach as well. And we did our masters together and we weren't even close in masters. And suddenly we connected. She stayed at my house for a week and I'm like, oh, you're mine now. And she's like, oh, you're mine now. And it's like the sister I never had.
Yes.
So it's, you know, always being open.
Yeah.
Open to the other influences.
Yeah.
Putting yourself at tables
Yeah.
where big conversations happen.
It's so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have no time for surface level conversation anymore.
Yeah.
I literally I just want to get deep. I want to talk about all this sort of stuff. That's why I love you so much, because every time we come together, it's just a conversation that's like this. Yeah. But you're right. And I think what's so important, what I see a lot with my clients is, you know, they might often I'm the first mentor that most people have worked with. You know, it's sort of like, oh, I've never really invested this much money. It's a bit nerve wracking. Like, I don't really know how this is going to work. But then they come in and then all of a sudden, like, they're doing all these experiences. They're meeting all these people. They're going out and just, you know, like I had a client wrap up her 6 months the other day and we sort of sat back and looked at all the things that she's done. She's been to Tony Robbins. She never would have done that. Her relationship's so much better. Like all these things. And it's like, she's made all these friend connections with other women in business that she would never have made otherwise. And it's like, those things are so worthwhile because, like sitting at those tables with people that you may not have otherwise, like you never know where that's going to take you.
100%. Could not agree more.
Love that. What's a message that if you know, what's one thing that you find yourself saying over and over and over that you just wish everyone knew?
2 things. I'm not going to say what I'm going to say too. First of all, nothing changes if nothing changes. I know it's used. I know everyone said it, but hear me when I say it. Nothing changes if nothing changes. If it's not lighting you up, if you're not waking up every day with some intentionality, some alignment, some energy, fucking move. Make a choice. You get to decide that, right?
Yep.
Actually, I've got 3. Everything's
I love that.
Everything is a choice.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything is a reflection of your choices.
Yes.
Take accountability, ownership, responsibility, and again, move.
Yes.
And the other one is,
I'm feeling that deeply.
what if I fall, but what if I fly?
Yeah,
that old quote. It's like been around since I think I saw it when I was 11.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's just held so deeply within me because every time I think about a big decision or a move and it's like, oh, fuck, what if this doesn't go the way I want it to go? It's like, oh, but what if it does?
Yeah.
How good that's going to be,
Yeah.
right? So sit in that.
Yeah. Love that so much. Thank you. This has been such a pleasure. Where do people find you to connect with you? I know you've got a podcast, you've got a website, you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram.
Yeah.
Where do people reach out?
I'm all over and
You're everywhere.
Coming to YouTube. I've got my fabulous
How
videographer here, Jarrett, who's been with us today with the recording. So thank you, Jarrett. And we will be likely popping this episode up on there. So YouTube and all of that is just Inside Out with Kris, Kris, and the website is .com.au. So jump on and have a look.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
just
having
adore
me.
you.
I adore you too. Thank you, babe. Yay.